Hi, I'm Heinbach. It's good to have you back. Welcome to Patreon Q&A number 16, where I answer questions sent in to me by the good people that support what I do on Patreon. If you want to get a question in, just subscribe to any tier there and watch for the sticky thread that I put up there. And thanks to everybody who supports what I do there. You are the reason I can keep on making all of these videos. So let's get to it. Magnus Lindberg. Hi, your thoughts on the Uher 4000 and 4200 as a sound recorder, lo-fi effect, price range. I think you're talking about the older Uher ones, not the report monitor ones. I prefer the monitor ones simply because they've got a third head which allows multiple use, such as a tape echo, and the audio quality is better. But the original Uhers are fine too, and I see them here in Germany usually very cheap. So like 60 euros to 120 euros. And as with any tape machine, you have to count in 3 hours with a tech, unless you find one that comes already perfectly serviced. So that's overhead you have to count in. And then you need all the adapters, which are DIN. And there's a store, SDS, in Munich that sells all those parts still and adapters. So there you can get your hookup from DIN, Deutsche Industrienorm, to jack adapters and all that stuff that you need. Pete Gostolo. Hi Heinbach, I've been inspired by you to experiment with tape techniques. I found it's very easy to create nightmarish dystopian sounds, but it's much more difficult to create happy, uplifting, optimistic music. Do you have any tips? Thanks again for all you do. It's a challenge. You have to challenge yourself because, for the longest time, I thought I would make my best music when I'm sad. Sadness, loneliness, all that stuff is a good motivator. Fear. Start out not with the minor key and just go to major keys. Simply, even though you might not resonate immediately with that major key, just throw in D major in there. And then keep it there. And then just open it up to more friendly, more consonant, more open chords, and work with those and try to live in that world and live in it earnestly, and then the music will become more open and bright. It's not about like sad or happy, it's more about bright and dark. So choosing a major key in your tape experiments would definitely help that. And then rhythms. I've spent a long time trying to figure out how to make tape loops rhythm. And you can do that by cutting them up and splicing in this intermediate tape. I think it's blank tape that you usually put on the beginning or at the end. And there's a video I made about that technique here. But you can also use external VCAs, voltage controlled amplifiers, and add control voltage to that, as I do with my Nagra 4 here, or in Gauss, the app I developed together with Brambos. That's all about making anything rhythmical, yet keeping the beautifully free-flowing style that tape loops have. So, maybe have a look at Gauss, see how it works there, and then see if you can apply these techniques to, your way of working with tape. Ronny Krieger. When I look at the market for second-hand gear at the moment, I find most of the products ridiculously overpriced. Do you believe this will eventually normalize again and advise people to just not buy right now and wait? Or do you foresee this to be the new normal? I noticed that spike in the last year too. Everybody wasn't touring, everybody was in the studio and needed something for a little fix of, buy now happiness, and also to work on new music. And a new piece of gear can be very inspiring because we're a playing human after all, like a Homo faber and a Homo ludens together, the creating human and the playful human, and together this makes up a musician. So people bought and bought and bought, and let me just check something on Reverb. I want to check the prices for an Eventide H3000. So I bought one of those for 1,800 at the beginning of the last year. And now the prices I see here, cheapest is 2,200, but The regular price seems to be 2,695 for a serviced unit, and mine was serviced too. That's like a third more, a quarter, something in between there. So that's an insane price hike for this still rather classic unit, and it's fantastic. But is it that fantastic? I mean, at this point, second-hand prices have almost become something of an investment, because anything that you buy second-hand seems to retain its value or rise in value. That has probably also something to do with inflation. And yeah, but I'm not an economist, so I can't tell you how that will be going. Old stuff will retain its value or rise in value, be it synthesizers, be it effects pedals, be it anything that's kind of classic, has a name attached to it, and then at some point becomes discontinued. So think about Moog pedals. I mean, those command crazy prices, even the small mini Foger stuff that they did. So in my experience over the past 25 years buying used, it's not gonna stop. Old stuff that has value, that was good at the time, will rise in price. How much though, that's, I think last year was like a, how you say, a fire starter for this insane price hike on vintage gear. That can't continue, because at some point, like, the buying public and the prices are just too divorced from reality. The biggest need that I see is always for good techs. These are the people that keep these machines alive. And that's something you always have to factor in when you buy something used, something old. HY Bones, did you ever end up getting a Soma Lyrate? No, I didn't. I've got the Pulsar 23, and that's amazing, and I really love that. But I don't need another machine like the Lyra right now. I actually don't need any machines. I've got enough machines. I'm happy with all the stuff that I have here. I just need more time to spend with them. And yeah, and that's something I'm working on. I'm working on the infrastructure of getting everything in place. And that's like the most interesting thing to me. Thinking about maybe getting even a studio table. Jacob Stevens. I often have trouble dialing in the amount of spatial effects, reverb, delay in my mixes. It seems like the effect of reverb varies from speaker to speaker and room to room almost more than frequency response. And even on the same speakers, a mix that sounded just right to me one day will sound like a washed out muddy mess the next. Any suggestions? It sounds like you need to treat your room, because getting reverb wrong is one of the surest signs of an bad acoustic listening situation. And I noticed that especially after Kiss Your Ears came by and installed all this acoustic stuff here. And now this room sounds rather nice, but I noticed that many of my older mixes suddenly felt too dry, because the reverb that was in here had added that kind of stuff to it, and now everything was like, okay, this is a bit crispy. And it was again one of those moments that you have in the whole journey of mixing, like, okay, another lesson learned. So you should probably work on your room treatment, and I'm gonna make a video on how that was done in my place. Just have to find the time for that, and then maybe that will inspire you how to work with that in your place. But yeah, room treatment, I think that's why you're struggling with it. And another thing, technically, I'm now assuming you've got a perfectly treated room, is that you have to really work on pre-delay times. Like, think musically, how many milliseconds would make sense for your reverb to be behind the music. So you don't, sometimes you want the reverb to be densely meshed with the signal, and sometimes you want it to be a bit of a secondary occurrence, which creates the illusion of a wider space, but also gives you all the possibilities of listening back to it without it becoming washed out. And I still adhere to the maxim of less is more, but also more is more. less is more means that on acoustic sources and many other things, I often prefer, on voice, I often prefer like the effect like reverb on. That's cool. Reverb off. Oh, I need it back. So just a touch. Just a touch is very nice. But then I also like putting dual quadra reverbs on things to make them huge and washed out. Play with these parameters. I think that would be my idea for your question. Oh, and yeah, I'm also now starting working with Dolby Atmos and trying to mix with that, which is a whole nother journey I'm really looking forward to go into, which will probably yield different answers to mixing to me also. Michael Konomos, the world of synthesizers and electronic music seems to be mostly white, which I also am. I'm interested in learning about artists with more diverse backgrounds who I might be missing out. Do you have a recommendation or two for your audience if you haven't already covered this before? I mean, I can, top of the head, I can name 3 people that I also know personally, which with music I find fantastic. And that is Kamaru, and his work is out on, for example, Psy Records. So he's a label mate and also lives in Berlin. He makes beautifully ambient music. Then there is A Cosmos. She's from Turkey and also very, very wide range of music that she does, oscillating between test equipment, ambient, lots of pedals, but then also going into pop and all that. Beautiful stuff. I can really recommend her. And I'm right now working with Ahmed, and she is from Cameroon and lives in Berlin. I'm working at Amplify, which is a mentorship program where we're producing basically a track or two, and it's been very inspiring to work with her. These are 3 people that I can recommend in this field that I just know personally. And everybody in the comments, please feel free to list your favorite artists of more diverse backgrounds. Michael, hello there. In your recent podcast, Why We Bleep, you mentioned going back to the Cocoquantus buffer toward the end of your set to listen to material recorded earlier in your set. I don't quite understand what you mean by this. Could you elaborate? That's very specific to my process, because at some point I start my sets oftentimes by recording stuff into the buffers on, and sometimes there, and then the buffers get like bigger because I keep like making stuff lower and lower and lower, and then I oftentimes put a clock impulse into either the reverse or the restart in, or both, and sometimes it happens that depending on the speed of the clock impulse, the buffer is never completely erased. So at some point here and at some point there, new stuff is recorded, but only there. And then when it's the end and I unpatch everything and I then pull out those clock pulses, I can listen to like a cut-up version of the whole set. And sometimes this inspires like another 10 minutes of music when I should probably have finished already. This is a very lovely thing because, it's revisiting the set that I played. And it's just one of those things that I would never think about to do, but in the interplay with the instruments, this just happened. Where's the first place internationally that you hope to go when things are back to normal? I actually really want to go to the UK because I've worked with so many cool people over there, like Spitfire for my Landfill Totems library, and I'm working with others, and then I want to see Look Mama No Computer again and see his beautiful new museum. And I also had a lot of fun just when I was in the UK, because I mean, it is one of the greatest places for music, so I really want to go there. Then Greece, to go visit family, have fun there. But that's private. Brandon Ford, do you feel like diet or just the food we eat in general has an impact on creativity? We're speaking of private. Yeah, absolutely. I think that. First of all, getting food regularly, regular intervals, regular times creates a structure. And a structure is always helpful in any process, I find. Like getting up, having a coffee, having a toast, having a muesli, and then starting work, taking a break, having like a huge glass of water, then working on, then dinner time. Is it dinner? No, it's lunch. I always mix those two up. So lunch, and then so on, so on, so on. The whole process of creating is nicer, I feel like, for me, if I have like this structure set, because I used to be completely disorganized in that. I would just wake up and then make music for 5 hours, basically in my underpants when I was a student, and then I would be shivering like 4 hours later and wondering why I was hungry and shivering, and I realized, oh wow, okay, this is not healthy. So yeah, structure helps, and food is one way to give you that structure. And of course, there's the sheer enjoyment of eating things that are good and healthy, and food is a very important piece of enjoyment, especially now I'm part of a Greek family through my wife, where food has always been one of the most important things, A, for the pure taste of it, and then B, for they come from a family of people that had restaurants also. So my wife even released this lovely cookbook, which is called Tante Poppy's Küche. And Tante Poppy, her aunt, lives like right next to us. And since the pandemic and the closing down of all the restaurants, I've basically been eating from this book, cooked by this fantastic cook, Tante Poppy, all the time. And this has been such, I can't understate like how much of a difference for me that has been to like know, wow, okay, at 12:30 there's gonna be another beautiful meal cooked by this woman, and a published author. So yeah, it's yeah. So Tante Poppys Küche. So that is something that I really love. And then another thing, of course, when you're eating well and eating like the right amount, not overeating and all that stuff, you will constantly be able to keep up your energy, like through the day of the creative process. I noticed that yesterday when I was at Amplify and I worked, I drove there on the bicycle and then went there and had then lunch that was very light. I just had I'm gonna mispronounce it, pho soup, and that was perfect because I wasn't tired after that, and I could like go on for another 4 hours after that. Had an apple in between, and went home and had a nice dinner. So not to. While the day before I had some Käsespätzle, which is like these cheesy noodles from, yeah, which are a specialty where I come from the southern side of Germany. But after that I was like, oh, this is heavy. So just managing the way your calorie intake matches up with what you want to do helps. And then when I cook for myself, which doesn't happen now so much because of I really enjoyed coming from a creative process and then doing another process that is in a way also creative. So it keeps you in this creating atmosphere, cooking, all that is similar in a way, and it gives a new perspective also to what I'm doing here in the studio, because oftentimes I had then the music playing in the studio and I could listen to it in the kitchen. And I think that's one of the best listening positions, is like from outside of the room, because you notice, okay, there's too much bass, there's that too much very easily, because you realize what comes through after traveling like through walls and through corridors. So another point for that. So as you can see, I'm not a fan of like all that stuff like eat food only for energy and stuff like that, like Soylent or Yule and all that stuff. I don't really, that's not for me. I like the pleasure that food gives. And I like to be aware of what I eat. So I hope this answers your question. I think it's very important. Oh, yes, and when I eat badly, that's another thing. If I eat bad food, which happens often enough, like when I work in theaters, and some have like really bad canteens. Some, I'm not gonna name any. Then some have fantastic ones, but some have bad ones. Then I'm just gonna be like, okay, okay, I better go to sleep now. And it's just heavy and sits in your stomach heavily. Evening Dreamer, would you have some tips and tricks about self-marketing and getting word out about your music? I'm really struggling with that part of the whole music making thing. I'm almost done with a new EP with my band, and other than a couple of friends who really like what I make, I can't seem to manage to get the music out there, despite making multiple videos, posting to social media, etc. Yeah, I mean, what worked for me, I don't know if it still works, but that was Instagram. So I started to document the whole process instead of thinking about these eruptive releases, like here's this thing that I made, here's the album, blah blah blah, and then the story stops. I thought about, no, let's just start documenting everything, same as I do on YouTube. I document everything and let everyone take part in the process. So I keep telling a story, and the story is as much about the art as it is about me and the art. And I think that is something that I personally enjoy myself. In most of the channels that I watch, I enjoy taking part in not just seeing the thing that someone creates, but the whole way that it is being created, opening that up, breaking that apart. That's something I like. I always like behind the studio, behind the music. I always love those kind of things. So that is something that worked for me. That's the best thing I ever did that worked for me. Going behind the scenes, showing the process, and Instagram was the easiest way to do that. I mean, I went to 1,500, I think, is it followers there, subscribers? I don't know. And without even knowing what hashtags are. The other things is always you have to be involved in communities. I keep telling that people, you have to get in touch with other musicians. You have to put on shows. You have to, if you find online communities, that be a part of them and engage with the audiences and with possible audiences, with peers, and try to create something together. The internet makes that easy. The first listeners are also people you've been talking about the whole process. When I was in the Wiggler forum, that was something that worked too, because I talked about synthesizers and how to actually get into Modular, and then I would, hey, here's my first cassette, it's 30 cassettes, and people bought them over that forum, and I kept posting music there, and those people were my first listeners, and that was really, really lovely to be part of a community and to give to the community and to get back from the community. So that is something you have to find. You have to find your community to engage with. And I'm never spend money on advertising or anything, except that is something that can work when you're specifically promoting a show. There you have to probably throw some money into Facebook's gaping maw. Bartek Train, was there an album, song, performance that permanently changed the way you look at the world? Oh, I remember listening to Street Spirit by Radiohead, and that was transformative. I really this track, I tried to figure out what it was, and I couldn't for the longest time. And that took me in a place. I kept dreaming about that music, and I realized this is something, this ethereal floating world that this track has is something I can really engage in, and I really want to engage in, and I want to do in my own way, just the vibe of the whole thing. I felt it was very gentle yet incredibly deep. So that was definitely a huge changer. Then there was listening to Die Drei-Groschen-Oper by Kurt Weill. And first I listened to that while I was having a fever. I listened to Whiskey Bar covered by The Doors, which is a Kurt Weill song from the rise and fall of the city of Mahagoni. And then I went into the whole Bert Brecht, Kurt Weill world. And I remember that stabby part. I went, what is this kind of off-kilter, strange music? And I was like, this is, I need to listen to that more. And that Fever Dream, that Fever amplified this. And I think at some point I had it on loop and it was in Fever. And it was very, very intense. So that really changed me. There were a bunch more, but I think I talked about them in other interviews. So, but this is something I don't think I've shared. Trey Milner, how do you keep track, pun unintended, of all your external inputs routing? Keeping so many signal sources out and ready to go seems difficult. Is it patch bay magic, or do you run everything into your mixer first to simplify everything? It's more of the latter, and honestly, I use this just like tape and I write things on it, and I should do it more because every time I'm not in the studio for a longer time, I forget where everything is. So I'm very much a person that believes everything should be memorized. I don't write many things down. I want everything to be in my head, which is a task which is just dumb. This doesn't work with this place. But I kind of feel it's like a good exercise for the brain. So I try to keep it all in my head, but I should start numbering like the insane wirings that I have here at least, or like doing the proper thing of like naming your power supplies and all that. But I'm not good at these tasks that require to impose order unless it's in a creative way. So I don't do it. So I guess it's just like YOLO here. It's a constantly evolving process. So every time I fix something, it's always changing again and again. Steve Manahan. One of my favorite videos of yours this year was, is it worth recording to tape for electronic dance music? And the main reason why was because of the awesome track that played behind your voice until the 5-minute mark. Of course, the information and tiny gear views on the video are lovely. I'm just curious if that little sketch will get released. Oh, never mind, I found it. Very much worth the subscription tier upgrade. Thank you for all the things you do, Heinbach. Ah, yeah, okay, many of the tracks, I've got way more music, way more music than I can release. So I put out a lot of stuff on Patreon for only the patrons to listen to. And that track apparently was on the tier, that's the 3.75 tier, if I'm not mistaken. And there you can get the music from all these videos. And right now I think it's 140 songs that you can get as MP3. So there's, I think that's more music than I released officially. And also you get previews, of course, from new albums, because some of these things then end up on albums. So yeah, if you can't find it in my library, it's probably a good chance that it is on the Patreon. D in Japan. Using so much analog equipment, do you have any way of remembering these crazy complex patches with photos or notes to reproduce later? Do you even bother, or just make something, record it, and move on? Yeah, that ties in with the question previous to this. I don't. No, it's all in my head. Everything is in my head, and that's a challenge, and that's good, and that keeps me fresh. So it's memorizing. I've always been a fan. Like when I played piano a lot more, I wasn't a fan of like reading. I was a fan of like committing to memory and then playing it. So that's something that I kept from that probably. Hey Heinbach, I love your videos and approach to making music, and I believe there's scope for more immersive interaction. Have you ever thought about doing week-long workshops? I would gladly join in such an event and pay a pretty penny for sure. I believe such events could be incredibly inspiring and build community, which I would love to see from you. So, pretty, please. I'm not saying no. It could be interesting. I mean, this Amplify mentorship is a lot of fun, and I really enjoy that. At some point before the pandemic, I bought a bunch of tape cutting tools and editing tools because I think I could do some creative tape loop workshops, and that of course didn't pan out simply because of the pandemic, but in general I could be open to that. I'm just imagining like something at a beautiful place, and then at the end there's a lovely collaborative project at the end, and that would be the main thing. I mean, the main thing for me, because in the end I'm an artist first and love to create something. So if this could be like a thing where we all like learn from each other, do something together, and in the end we have like, I don't know, Destruction Loops 5 or something, which is something that could be cool. So not unopposed to that. I'm probably just not the one to organize that because yeah, the time is too crazy for me to think about how to ticket and organize and do all that. But yeah, not opposed. Richie486. When touring internationally, how do you manage different power plug types and voltage types? What is the standard thing musicians do, and do you do anything differently when using test equipment, etc.? I don't tour with test equipment really because it's just too heavy, so it doesn't make sense for me. At one point I ordered test equipment to the location and then played that. Hi Denver, and that was incredibly fun. But I don't really do tour with it. It's too heavy. And all of the stuff that I've now runs usually like at 9, 12, 15 volts. And the only thing that I do, I bring a German Powerleiste and adapter. So, and Powerleiste, that's a funny acronym. Steckdosenleiste, the thing where you plug everything in. Power bar, power strip, power strip. Okay, that was long-winded. I'll probably cut this out. Power strip, yes. And then I only need one adapter and can plug everything in. Because, yeah, all the stuff runs at 9 to 12 volt and it will convert within itself. So I don't need any power converters. And for anything else, I always have like USB power bank and my volts stuff, like with all their different adapters ready, should anything go wrong. So, and that works fine. Troy Alden, Windphone. Hello Heinbach, what is the software you use? It looks like to analyze your incoming sounds. Looks like EQ and channels all coming to your audio interface. What do you do with that info? Does it make recording easier? It's the RME, what's it called? RME DigiCheck that comes with the RME interfaces. And honestly, I put it on mostly because it looks cool and it's more interesting than just, just a screen. And sometimes it helps me with identifying signals that I can't hear anymore. That's a thing, because now I'm 42 and it starts to drop off, I think, at 17.3K for me. And there are signals sometimes that some of the test equipment throws up that is it's just above that. And I only hear those if I amplify them really a lot. But I see them in the meter. And then I'm like, oh, that signal is present. So then I need to filter that out. So that is where that helps. But I don't get anything like, does this need more bass? Does this need more anything? I don't get that kind of information from there simply because I'm not a very visual person. I'm an auditory person. So I tend to find these things by listening. But the signals that I can't listen to anymore, like above 17 kilohertz, yeah, I need something like this for. AJ Wilson. Hi, I've played music for decades and used a lot of physical gear, but never really clicked with the DAW. Frankly, having tried Cubase and Ableton, I can't imagine anything less inspiring. But I want to start sharing my music in recorded form, so I realized that I will have to get to grips with the DAW, if only for mixing and mastering. How would you recommend I approach this? Use it like a tape machine? Just use it for like horizontally editing all your stuff. So you don't need anything with a lot of inputs, you don't need a lot of things, and you can I mix almost everything analog here on my mixing board, and that's the most fun and inspiring way for me too. But I can work easily in a digital audio workstation, having used them since 1997. So it's just a different thing. And I prefer to do like multiple things at the same time, which is always more difficult on a DAW. And yes, I know there are controllers, but yeah, I can't deal with things that change what they are all the time, because controllers have multiple functions. So no, yeah, just use it in the simplest form possible. Don't overthink it. And don't even like turn off the grids on all these things. Just make it like visually, if you want to edit, and by ear, and do it like that. And that, don't force it into like the little grids. Just make it free from that, and then you can have a good time. It's same as editing tape, only much easier. So, and then it stays also very inspiring. And I'm definitely personally not opposed to DAWs. I use them just as regular. It's just a tool. It's just for the creation process, I find it more inspiring. But then for the process of, okay, so now I've recorded this, how can I make this more translatable for others? It helps to have like the editing head on. So suddenly I'm the editor of myself, and that is an incredibly powerful process, and the very brainy process that a DAW enables in me helps with that. So think about it as just a different form of strength, because yeah, it helps you to get all the stuff that you made in a probably more wild and free process and give it some structure and order. David Wellen. Hi, I'm David. Feeling good to be back. So, when playing around with various stuff that makes sounds, I almost always find myself lacking enough pre-fader sense. For example, I think it's convenient to connect filters pre-fader to get rid of the risk of total feedback chaos when turning some piece of gear up a bit. If you're lucky, you'll get 2 pre-faders on a mixer, but normally it's more like none. To get 4, it seems like you'll have to pay from at least 500 euros to gear you obviously already have, besides some minor details. Anyway, my actual question. You're definitely what we'd call a creative person. So do you know about any creative ways to get the functionality of pre-fader sense in any other way with any other gear? For example, I already use a small extra mixer I had lying around, and by running it mono, only it's possible get it to do pre-fader sending, but I would like some more. Yeah, the AUX is a constant battle. I mean, the happiest I was with that was when I had an Allen Heath mix wizard, and that had 6 AUX, and that was good. That's kind of enough. Now the Ramsa desk that I have here only has 4, and what I do, I have like an incredibly complex chain right now where I've sent like AUX 4 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a lot of units, and then I put these back on channels here so I can process them, or I use a little keyboard mixer to pour just a few channels together so my mixer is not completely overwhelmed and full. Simo Antere. Hi Heinbach, what are your favorite math tricks? I'm currently studying the more complex side of using maths and would love to hear your thoughts about it. That's the bouncing ball patch. I really love that. That always brings a smile to my face. And it's so nice as a modulator to have this physical modeling, analog computing kind of style. It just brings joy. So check out the bouncing ball patch. It is in the manual and it takes a little bit of wrapping your head around it, but it's absolute favorite. And yeah, I put that in more often than I should. Ken Shashtok, short of dropping a good deal of dollar on an OG 606 or a little amount of dollar on the devil created 606 Offspring. And for some bizarre reason, there seems to not be a big 606 obsession in Eurocrack. Any comments regarding 606 sounding modules, or just suck it up and get a 606 and stop whining? It's a complex question. I really don't. I think there's 606 modules out there because I see there's a sound module which is sample based, dramatics, R606 on a 4 HP module. Oh, there's a clone, Gerbster.nl. Yeah, he's got all the modules, a MIDI interface, and snare drum sound samples, but not the sequencer. So there are people doing that. Yeah, so there are people doing that. There is the sequencer. Tabutech does it. Tabutech has the strap sequencer of the Roland TR606 and published it in a modular extended form as a 6 sequencer module in 1U and 3U. It looks tiny. It looks tiny, but yeah. Okay. Got a lot of choices already for a 606. All right. 2 more questions just popped in. One that I had overlooked and one that came in right after I edited this video. So let's start. Linus Fitness Center. Hi Heinbach. Following on from your TR608 video, I wondered how you used to process your 606 before the mod. Your 606 always sounded super punchy and inspired me to use mine more. I think the key to processing the 606 is boosting the 6 Hz band. And for that, I usually use my Klein und Hummel UE400, which is a pretty awesome equalizer. And that 60 Hz band sounds really, really nice, especially on the 606. Then, of course, you're gonna hear tape saturation on the 606. And sometimes I do crazier stuff like running it through the Princeton Applied Research CR4A here, or this lock-in amplifier here, which adds all kinds of interesting noises and sounds, and yeah, makes it a little bit different. Then, okay, I almost forgot. I also employ now a filter. Okay, this Korg VCF filter. So that helps in just adding a bit more motion because it has an envelope follower, and that makes especially the cymbals and stuff swing nicely. So that's something that I did in the recent times a lot before I got the mod, and it still runs through the filter because I think it just also adds a nice tone. And next question is from Jesse Blaney. Hello from Sydney, Australia. This might seem like a basic question, but perhaps highly relevant to those struggling with creative blocks. What is your methodology for releasing your works? Do you ever go back and finish old ideas, works from years prior? I've seen you create a lot of new material based upon new gear purchases or new studio setups and a new idea, but I'm sure you have unfinished work in the past. Is this a struggle of yours or a consequence of additionally becoming a YouTube content creator? It's not a struggle, I think. Because I don't have much unfinished material. Basically, I trained myself to create a lot of music fast, and I don't do much multi-track editing anymore. And that's the part that makes everything slow. Because while you have all these possibilities to work on your sounds, work on the tracks, this also makes it possible to do so. So in order to keep my brain from overthinking, I started to record directly to tape. So stuff is done, and it's possible maybe to add something little over stuff, but not that much. So it's not such a big problem for me anymore. And when I release music, I oftentimes have a few core pieces that are tied together, and then I see what in the past would fit to that. Sometimes also the album is completely new, like Impulsgenerator, Schwebungssumme, and Landfill Totems, of course. Those are very much concept albums, like Gestures also, that features just recordings made in a week. But yeah, sometimes I have a core set, like 4 or 5 tracks that belong together, and then I look in the past which tracks I can pick. And due to my library being this big, I'm a bit spoiled for choice about tracks that I can use. It's just a question of, does it fit the whole narrative of the album? Well, that were all the questions for this Q&A. I'll be putting up a link to the next one on Patreon. And thanks to everybody who supports what I do there. This really means the world to me, and it helps me make videos. So, thanks. All right, I'll be seeing you in the next one. Have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.